Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Top 10, I got a top 10. Got my motivation high for my top 10. Gotta learn from the wise women and men. All my life, like 9 to 9. For my top 10, top 10, 9 to 9. This one's for my top 10.
Hey, it's Evan Carmichael, and I make these videos because chances are you are the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more. And you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Dr. Joe Dispenza, and my take on his top 10 rules for success. Enjoy. Okay, let's kick it off with rule number 1. Keep going.
Overcoming the old self allows us to become somebody else. And there is that period of transition. I call it the void where there's just not a lot happening. And you just got to be able to keep going and continuously get to the end of your belief where most people stop. I just had a fabulous conversation with someone this weekend. Broke through to the other side, and now there's so much magic happening around this person. But she's worthy now to receive it. And that is the key, because the universe only gives us what we think we're worthy of receiving. So we got to become initiated into this and understand it. Thousands of years of programming that says that we have to change things matter to matter, you know, in three-dimensional reality. And it will take time, but to begin to connect to that resource called the quantum field and create from the field instead of from matter, there's a lot of unlearning that has to go on.
Rule number 2, go from thinking to doing.
I think this is a time in history where it's not enough to know. This is a time in history to know how. And if you rewind the tape 10 years ago, you know, information was the thing that stimulated thought, stimulated new ideas. And as we learn new things, we make new connections in our brains. So as we begin to add new stitches into that three-dimensional tapestry in our mind, we're beginning to cause our mind to function in new ways. But the key then is to apply it, to personalize it, to do something with it. And 10 years ago, when I got in front of an audience and talked about the application, nobody wanted to step outside that philosophical, theoretical, intellectual realm, right? Because doing something means you're going to have to change something about yourself.
Painful.
Yeah, you're going to get uncomfortable, right? And I think we're in an age of information. And in an age of information, ignorance is a choice. And because of technology, we have access to so much content. And information creates awareness. And awareness is consciousness. And you can't have consciousness without energy. They work together. So there's an energetic change, I think, that's taking place in the world right now, where people are so informed that old models, old paradigms are beginning to break down, whether it's the medical model or the religious model, the education model, journalism, the economy, politics. It's all beginning to come to the surface because something else has to come out. And I think that one of the things that people are realizing is that you don't have to be a Buddhist monk to do this, or a nun with 40 years of devotion. You just got to understand the formula. And just like any skill or anything you learn, you got to go from thinking to doing to being. You got to take knowledge, you create the experience, and if you keep doing it over and over again, you start getting a skill, or you start getting wise about how to do it. And you know that you know how to do it.
Rule number 3, practice gratitude.
If we teach a person then how to trade that frustration or that hatred for an elevated emotion, and they'll say, yeah, but you know, it was my ex's fault, or I got betrayed by my partner in business. Yeah, we know that. Okay, so let's take your partner in business or take your ex. Let's duct tape them, put them in a cannon, and shoot them to the moon. Now what are you going to do? Sooner or later, you got to reckon with yourself and change, right? So then teach a person then how to trade that emotion for an elevated emotion. Now,
trade the emotion for an elevated emotion.
Right. So you're going to give that up, and you're going to practice feeling gratitude as an example.
Yes.
And the person says, well, I can't feel gratitude. And I say, absolutely you can, because you don't practice feeling it. You practice spending most of your time feeling hatred and frustration. So now it's going to take a little time to cause that heart of you to bloom, or your heart of yours to bloom. Once they're able to feel even the smallest measure of gratitude, where they start feeling appreciation, thankfulness, gratitude, it's emotional signature. When you get something, when you're receiving something, when something has happened to you, or when something is happening to you, you say thank you because you're receiving something. So the emotional signature of gratitude means the event has already happened or it's happening to you. So the moment you open your heart and you feel gratitude, well, that emotion then is telling the body that the experience has already occurred. And the thought then can make it into the body because it's consistent with the thought. So now you're beginning to program the autonomic nervous system into a very specific destiny. You got to maintain that modified state of mind and body your entire day, independent of the conditions in your outer environment, independent of your body's cravings of those emotions and habituations, and independent from time. And if you can, get ready. Because something weird or unusual, some synchronicity, some coincidence, some opportunity is going to land in your lap. And you didn't have to go and get it.
Yes.
It came to you. Now you're the vortex of creation. So if you say to me, well, I was feeling gratitude, but then there was traffic, or my coworker sent me a nasty email, then I would say, oh my God, you mean you're allowing your environment, your outer environment, to control how you feel and think? You're back to the unconscious program that you're the victim to your life.
You got it.
But when you start producing those outcomes in your life, you're going to pay attention to what you did inside of you, and you're going to believe more that you're the creator of your life and less of the victim of your life.
Rule number 4, embrace the future.
I think we've been hypnotized and conditioned into becoming materialists. I think that we define reality with our senses, and I think that is one of the biggest illusions. So the fundamental question is, can you believe in a future that you can't see or experience with your senses yet, but you've thought about enough times in your mind that your brain has literally changed to look like the event has already occurred? Now, the latest research in plasticity says that's absolutely possible. And can you select a new possibility in the quantum field and begin to emotionally embrace that future every single day to such a degree that your body, as the unconscious mind, the objective mind, does not know the difference between the experience in your life that's creating the emotion and the emotion that you're fabricating by thought alone, to the degree that you begin to signal new genes and new ways to change your body to look like the experience has already happened. Now, the latest research in epigenetics says it's absolutely possible. Now, think about this. Every day, installing the circuitry, every day conditioning the body into the emotion of the future, that your body begins to change to look like it's already happened. Now, this is where it gets fun, because now you no longer have to go anywhere to get it. Now it begins to come to you. You become the vortex or the magnet to your destiny. So then people who come out of their meditation and they say, well, I just focused on my wealth. Why isn't it there? Well, you're not that good. If you're asking why isn't it there, you're back to the old person again. Stay in that state for an extended period of time as an experiment, as the scientist in your life, to keep your energy connected to the dream of your future. And then see what kind of effects begin to take place without moving into impatience, without moving into frustration, without starting to analyze why it hasn't happened or when. That is the trap of defining reality with your senses. So you have the thought of your future and you don't see it, then you experience separation. But people who are practicing this work, they have the thought of their future and they feel the emotion of their future. They're still connected to it, right? So that takes practice. And it's just learning, like hitting a golf ball, hitting a tennis ball, dancing the salsa, crocheting, whatever it is. You gotta start out staying real conscious and learning. Then you get good at it and it gets to be instrumental. It gets to be fun. And that's what I want for everybody, that the act of creation should be a blissful, playful, ecstatic, loose, free process. And so I love the idea of people taking time out of their lives to prove to themselves that if they're defined by the vision of the future, then they're not living by the memories of the past. And that's where the unknown exists. So many people, the unknown is a scary place. So they don't see that future because they're used to seeing that future with evidence with their senses. And you have to be able to get beyond that and stay in the unknown, stay in that discomfort, and then in that moment to begin to self-regulate. Like, oh, I'm starting to feel a little anxiety. Ooh, I'm starting to feel a little frustration. That's the defining moment where your body's going back to the past, because emotions are a record of the past. Or you go into routine again. So you catch yourself. It's a victory. And if you keep catching yourself, those victories add up. And it's not so much about your wealth or your health or your freedom or your new relationship. It's actually about who you become.
Also, if you want to have more self-belief and more self-confidence, I've created a special free program where every day for the next 254 days, I will send you an unlisted video to help you boost your self-belief and self-confidence. The link to join for free is in the description below.
You were up and dressed and ready to go before your parents were up. You know why? Because you knew something unexpected was going to happen. That's how we should live our lives. Waking up with the understanding to expect the unexpected.
Rule number 5, meditate.
We have research to show that 60 days of meditation, 5 days a week, will lengthen your life. The telomeres, the little shoestrings on the end of your DNA, get longer. That means your biological age is changing. So we have the evidence now to show people what's possible. We have brain scans that are so outside of normal that when neuroscientists see them, they're blown away, because the amount of energy that's in the brain during this transcendental moment is hundreds of times outside of normal.
Wow.
I mean, you can't make your brain do that. Something is happening to you, and that person's having a transcendental moment. And we now know that we can predict it, and we now know that we can induce it. So then there's the evidence there.
Rule number 6, observe your thoughts.
I think, everything starts with a thought. I mean, everything that you do in your life, you have to have a thought before you initiate an action, right? So if you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, like any great leader in history understands that, the first thing you have to do is you have to decide, are you going to be defined by a vision of the future, or are you going to live by the memories of the past? So, I'll give you an example. Most people wake up in the morning, and your brain is a record of the past. It's an artifact of everything you've learned and experienced to this moment, right? It's a memory bank. So most people wake up in the morning and they start thinking about their problems, and those problems are connected to certain people and things at certain times and places. And the moment they start turning on those circuits, those memories are actually causing them to think in the past. Every single one of those memories has an emotion associated with them, and emotions are the end product of past experiences. So then the moment they recall the event, or they recall some problem in their life, they start feeling unhappy, they start feeling discouraged, they start feeling anxious. Now, thoughts are the language of the brain, and feelings are the language of the body, and how you think and how you feel creates your state of being. So we could say then, most people's entire state of being when they start their day is in the familiar past. Well, if you live in the familiar past, then it makes sense you're going to create the predictable future. So what happens for most people is they get stuck in their biology. So think about this. Your body is your unconscious mind. It doesn't know the difference between an experience in your life that creates an emotion and an emotion that you can create by thought alone. So if you're living by the same emotion every single day, and those emotions are influencing your thoughts, and you can't think greater than how you feel, or feelings have become the means of thinking, you're thinking in the past. Your lens of the future is going to be colored by the past, so you can't see possibilities. So most people like to wait for crisis or disease or diagnosis before they wake up enough to see. Well, the challenge is that biology tends to be redundant. So if you keep thinking the same thoughts, and those thoughts begin to fire certain circuits in your brain, the nerve cells that wire together, so all of a sudden you start getting hardwired, and those are the thoughts that you can think the easiest. At the same time, those thoughts produce chemicals called emotions, and the next thing you know, your body gets accustomed to living by the same emotions, and it could be guilt, it could be unhappiness, it could be pain, but at least it's familiar to you, at least you can predict it. So some people would rather cling to the familiar than take a chance in possibilities. So for most people then, they say, well, I don't really see how my thoughts have anything to do with my destiny. Well, that's because 95% of those thoughts are subconscious programs, right? So you're not even conscious that you think those thoughts. So the first step to change is starting to think about what you've been thinking about and change it. And then when you begin to observe those thoughts, you're no longer the program. You're the consciousness observing
Just
the program.
simply by being an observer of your thoughts.
Right. So most people, though, when you do that, when you decide to really take a look, it's like lighting a match in a dark place. So you feel uncomfortable. So it's easier to turn on your TV. It's easier to play with your cell phone, to distract yourself from those feelings. Well, when you understand that change really requires becoming uncomfortable to a certain degree, and that's normal, that you're leaving the known and you're stepping into the unknown, then it begs the question, what thoughts do you want to fire and wire in your brain? Because your attention on those thoughts begins to reorganize circuitry, remold the brain.
Rule number 7, self-regulate.
So then when you're feeling gratitude and your heart is open, you're broadcasting energy into the field. Now,
frequency.
A frequency. You lay the intent of the thought of your health or your wealth. That frequency can carry the thought of your wealth. It can carry the thought of your health. If you're suffering, suffering does not carry, that energy does not carry the thought of your wealth. It carries a different set of thoughts. So then we're teaching people how to self-regulate, because if you're going to believe in that future that you're imagining with all of your heart, it better be open and activated.
Right.
And you better know how to self-regulate. And you have to know the moment you disconnect from the energy of your future because of some circumstance in your life and you lose that feeling, if you're practicing it on a daily basis with your eyes closed, then the next level is to be able to open your eyes and do it right in the moment and be able to self-regulate and change the frustration from some experience in your life back to the energy of your future. Now, that requires great awareness and great effort. But if you have a community of people that are practicing this on a daily basis and they're connected to their future because that's where their mind is, they begin to want the future more than the emotions of the past. So we've done enough measurements now, Louis, to know that we can teach people how to do that, and we have evidence that people can sustain it for 45 minutes to an hour. It's a skill now. They know that they know how to do it. So now they have brain coherence and heart coherence. Well, once the heart begins to become orderly and coherent, it acts as an amplifier and it drives energy to the brain. So now the brain is getting more energy once the heart is open, and then you're thinking a different set of thoughts. And those thoughts produce different chemicals for you to feel more of that. And here comes nitric oxide from oxytocin, and then all of a sudden your heart literally starts to swell. It literally begins to open up, and there's more energy going there, and now you're coming from a different level of mind.
Rule number 8, mentally rehearse.
You have to really begin to mentally rehearse. Like, so you ask yourself at the end of your day, I do this every day. How'd I do? How'd I do today, bro? How'd you do? Did you do good? Where'd you fall from grace? What was it that caused you to go unconscious for the rest of the day? Like, what was that moment? Now, if you're a student of life, you'll begin to contemplate, well, it was that person that said that thing, then I reacted, or I got this email, or things didn't go my way, and I started feeling angry or frustrated or fearful. The next time that happens, how could I evolve my experience? Now, you may have to search for some answers of the best model to build, or you may actually have a long contemplation and start to go, God, the next time that happens, I think I'm going to do this, or I'm going to do that, or I'm going to plan my behaviors. And the act of closing your eyes and rehearsing what you're going to do begins to install the neurological hardware in your brain to look like you already did it. Now the brain is no longer a record of the past. Now it's a map to the future. And if you keep installing that hardware, the hardware will become a software program, which means you'll just start acting like a happy person. Why? There's no magic there. You installed the circuitry. So that's more important than the news.
Right.
It's more important than answering any email or any text. It's more important than talking about your past or some dinner. If you can begin to just think about how you're going to do it differently, that's the building process neurologically already. So now you have to get conscious in order to do that. And it takes some time. That means you got to shut your cell phone off. You got to close your door. You got to take a break from everything out there and begin to practice. And so by experience then, you start noticing, oh, here it comes the frustration, or here comes the fear. And now we've given people the tools to be able to self-regulate, to create brain and heart coherence. And so you see people say, excuse me 1 minute, I just gonna need a minute. They take some breaths, they get back in, they connect to the energy of their future. This is incidental compared to where they're going. So they don't fall from grace. They don't allow their energy to drop. And so, in the beginning, it takes a lot, because it takes a lot of energy and awareness to stay conscious and not go unconscious. But if you're persistent and you're determined and you're sincere, you begin to figure it out. You begin to say, I am not going to give my power away to that person or that circumstance when I can use it to heal or to create a new future. And so people then won't excuse themselves and say, I had a hard day yesterday, I had a fight with my coworker or my ex, and I don't feel like doing the work. Well, that's the time to get back on the horse.
Yeah.
Because it's all of those times that we self-correct. Those are the most valuable moments to us. People who've had profoundly transcendental experiences where we say got lit up, they connected, and their brain goes into very, very high coherent states and super gamma patterns that are way outside of normal. And they have a transcendental download or connection that's mystical. They look back at their entire life. They don't want to change one thing in their past because it got them to that moment. That's the moment the past no longer exists. Now, by the same means, they look back at their past and they see all those tough moments where they overcame themselves and they fall in love with that person. They don't look at the good meditations or the things that went well. They know that it was those moments that got them to this moment. And I think then that's when they begin to understand that all of the hard work, all the effort in who we become makes, no one can take that away from us. So then once we arrive at that level and we experience whatever the dream is or whatever we create, then the next thing is do it until you fully enjoy it. And then when it gets boring or predictable, let's go again. Let's do something else.
Rule number 9, open your heart.
Our research shows that when you get a community of people together, and they begin to open their hearts and they have the intent for the greatest good for people that they know or people that they could focus on, that our research shows that you can actually affect another person's autonomic nervous system when you move into heart coherence in a very non-local way. Well, what's the significance of that? Well, we have an amazing community. And our community is connected by these elevated emotions. Those other emotions of survival create separation. But we work to open our hearts and to feel connected. We can begin to affect people in a very non-local way. In other words, everybody else's hearts go into coherence at the exact same time. You, by opening your heart, strengthen your connection to this community. You strengthen the connection to the people that you relate with in your lives. When you move into that state, you begin to affect everybody else.
And rule number 10, the last one before a very special bonus clip, is get out of survival mode.
The majority of our thoughts and feelings are connected to our sexuality, to our victimization, our guilt, our suffering, our shame, our unworthiness, our self-doubt, or our importance, our control, our fear, our anger, our frustration, our hatred, our judgment. Those are the first 3 hormonal centers in the body. And those first 3 centers have everything to do with survival. And those centers are energy consumers. Orgasm, digestion, stress is a lot of energy that we're drawing from our very vital life force, our resource of light and information, and we're turning it into chemistry, and we're literally robbing the body's energy, right? So then living like that for the short term is okay, because the body can move back to homeostasis, it can restore itself, but when we're overdoing that consistently, then there's no energy for growth and repair, because you're living constantly in survival. So again, you can eat all the right food, you can do all the right things, but if you're living in anxiety and fear and you're viewing your world from the worst case scenario that could possibly happen, because that's what you do in survival, there's no energy for growth and repair. There's no energy for healing. So the majority of our thoughts are signaling certain circuits in the brain that signal another part of the brain, the limbic brain, to make what's called a neuropeptide. Neuropeptides are chemical messengers that signal hormonal centers. So now you're taking thought and you're storing it as energy in these energy centers. And if you're living in survival, why would you open your heart? I mean, it's just not a time to open your heart. I mean, if you're getting chased by T-Rex, it's not a time to meditate. It's not a time to learn. It's not a time to connect. It's not a time to communicate. It's not a time to sit down and go within. It's not a time to be vulnerable. It's time to run, fight, or hide. And so,
Is that why we're this way? I've never asked you this before. Is this some, I don't think you believe this, but I just want to understand, is this some sort of genetic disposition that's been passed down to us since we've been chased by T-Rex?
I think so. I think survival has been very adaptive.
Yeah.
Like, because if you're being chased by T-Rex, you don't run up to T-Rex and say, oh, cute little dinosaur, let me pet you. That's not adaptive. The fear is adaptive. You run from the unknown.
Yes.
You run from challenges, right?
Yes.
So if you're living in survival, there's better chances of surviving if you run from the unknown. And by the way, when you're living in survival, the infinite potentials in the quantum field, you'll select the worst case scenario in your mind. And you'll begin to emotionally prepare yourself for the worst case scenario, because you have better chances of surviving.
There you go.
If you prepare for the worst, right?
There you
so
go.
people spend their whole life thinking about the worst thing and emotionally embracing it. Well, you take a thought and emotion, or an image and an emotion, you're branding or conditioning your body into what? Anxiety, into fear. So then you keep doing that over and over again, the body becomes the mind of fear. And whether you think you can control it or not, you're going to have a panic attack. And the panic attack is the body saying, you've conditioned me this way. Try as you may with your conscious mind to control it. You programmed it subconsciously. Then you start worrying about the next panic attack, and it's that very anticipation that keeps the person on the hamster wheel,
and robs them of all of this energy as well.
They're absolutely so they don't believe in possibility when they're living in that state, because in survival, it's not a time to create. All the blood flow is going to the hindbrain and away from the forebrain. There's no physiology really for a person to begin to create a new future. So think about it. So then 70% of the time, people in the world are living anticipating the next moment based on their past moment. And so they're laying reality down moment by moment with the next known, the next predictable moment. And so the hormones of stress endorse the senses. Our senses become heightened when we're under stress, and we become materialists. We narrow our focus on the danger. So then you're focusing on matter. You're focusing on the material world. And when you do that, you put all your attention, the arousal of the stress hormones puts all your attention on your body. If you're being chased by T-Rex, you better be paying attention to your body.
Now I've got a special bonus clip that I think you're gonna enjoy. But before that, it's time for the question of the day. I wanna know, what was your single biggest takeaway from this video? And what is your specific plan of action for the next week? When you just watch a video and get motivated by it, you have a 35% chance of following through. But when you get motivated and then create a specific plan of action, you have a 91% chance of following through. That's what we do here, Believe Nation. We get motivated, but then we do something about it. And when you commit to other people, you increase your chances even further of following through. So, what was your biggest takeaway from this video? And then what is your plan of action around it for this week? Put it down in the comments below, because I want to celebrate you.
If you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny, that your thoughts create your life, let's examine the thoughts that you think. Now, you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day. Out of those 60 to 70,000 thoughts that you think in one day, 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before. So the same thoughts will always lead to the same choices. The same choices will always lead to the same behaviors. The same behaviors will always create the same experiences, and the same experiences always produce the same emotions. And those same emotions then drive our very same thoughts. And our biology, our neurocircuitry, our neurochemistry, our neurohormones, and even our genetic expression stays exactly equal to how you think, how you act, and how you feel. Now, how you think, how you act, and how you feel is called your personality. And your personality creates your personal reality. That's it. So then if you believe just the slightest bit in this idea,
that your personality creates your personal reality, and you wanted to change your personal reality, that means you'd have to begin to change your personality by thinking about what you've been thinking about and change it. To begin to become conscious of your unconscious habits and behaviors and modify them. And then look at the emotions that keep you connected to past experiences and decide if those emotions belong in your future. You see, most people try to create a new personal reality as the same personality, and it doesn't work. We literally have to become someone else. So reason this with me. A habit is a redundant set of automatic, unconscious thoughts, behaviors, and emotions that's acquired through frequent repetition. A habit is when you've done something so many times that your body knows how to do it as well as your mind. So if you're thinking the same thoughts 90% of the time as the day before, you're demonstrating the same behaviors 90% of the time, and you're embracing the same emotions as the day before 90% of the time, over time, you begin to fire the same circuits in your brain in the same sequences, in the same patterns, in the same combinations. Now, there's a principle in neuroscience that says that nerve cells that fire together wire together. So as you think the same thoughts that lead to the same choices, that of course produce the same behaviors that lead to the same experiences, that ultimately produce the same emotions, that in time you begin to hardwire your brain into the same finite pattern. Now that box in your brain, there's no literal box in your brain, but that finite signature ultimately becomes your identity. So then most people, by the time they're 35 years old, become a set of memorized behaviors, emotional reactions, unconscious attitudes, beliefs, and perceptions that function like a subconscious computer program. 95% of who you are by the time you're 35 years old is a memorized state of being in which you've done something so many times that your body now is doing it better than your brain. Every time you learn something new, you add a new stitch to the three-dimensional tapestry of your gray matter. And if you begin to think about what you learned, you're causing your brain to fire in new sequences and new patterns and new combinations. And whenever you make your brain work differently, you're changing your mind, because mind is the brain in action. So we could say then that new thoughts should lead to new choices, and new choices should lead to new behaviors, and new behaviors should create new experiences, and new experiences then should create new emotions, and those new emotions should inspire new thoughts, and that's called evolution.
If you want 10 more awesome rules from Joe Dispenza, check out the video right there next to me. I think you'll enjoy it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
So if you think 60 to 70,000 thoughts in one day, and we do, and 90% of those thoughts are the same thoughts as the day before, and you believe that your thoughts have something to do with your destiny,